About 2 years ago, I went on a solo backpacking trip through the country of Colombia, and what was supposed to be a month-long trip turned into a 3-month-long stay, if that gives any indication of how much I fell in love with the country and its people. One of the most befuddling and surprising parts of my tour was landing a voiceover job working for a family living in the very rural Bogota suburb of Boyacá, who were building an educational website offering English classes to Colombians. They were looking for English speakers who could speak Spanish and could speak in English without an accent to record tracks for their many video and audio lessons, which they plan to host on their, as of my time there, unfinished website.
Primer paso. Comenzaremos con videos de práctica de estructura dinámica diaria con hablantes norteamericanos. Sabemos que las clases personalizadas con profesores nativos cuestan mucho. Por esta razón, tutorenglish.com creó videos dinámicos, práctica interactivos que solo están enfocados en ti.
Me having a voice for radio and a fair bit of experience in this kind of work, I took the job and I did the work in return for free room and board. Days were spent in front of a green screen or microphone, recording basic English phrases over and over again, and working with the 4-member family and their extended team of 4 Colombian youths, editing the videos and coding the website. It was a wild and janky studio of old laptops and old audio equipment strewn all about their ample household. A bedsheet was the green screen, a toilet paper roll surrounded by porous construction foam, something like a light pool noodle, served as a windscreen and pop blocker for the microphone, and a mix of old cell phones and video cameras, all recording at different frame rates and using different codecs, were dumped into old laptops running freeware editing equipment where we'd sit and spend days upon days doing simple edits that would be finished so much quicker had anyone in the room not been self-taught or knew how to navigate the equipment and the software they were using. It had the feel of pirate radio, this secret project that the man in charge of, the patriarch of the family, was the surefire way to earn the money to get his family out of the country and emigrated to Canada for a better life. And why did they want to go to Canada? Well, all the news stories they heard about the United States of America made them think that everyone's a racist and that there's school shootings on a daily basis. They're not wrong. So every day we rose at 6 a.m. for breakfast and a brief Spanish and English exchange with the family and locals over our meal. After wolfing down a traditional dish such as hot cocoa with melted cheese, yes, this is a thing in Colombia, you dip bread in the mixture, we'd set about working on the video and recording the audio. And after the day's recording and troubleshooting any of the common issues one runs into doing this kind of work on the kind of equipment and the kind of environment we had to do, I would have the evening off to explore this tiny rural town to myself. Needless to say, I went crazy from boredom fast. The family was wonderful, and the time spent with them was productive. A particularly wonderful memory being the Friday night they took me to their favorite bar in town, which was, of all things, a bar dedicated solely to Nordic death metal. No stranger time was had in my period living in Colombia than hanging out with a Colombian dad of 3 kids and talking about bands such as Burzum and Opeth while slamming back cans of poker, the local beer, and watching other farmers arrive on horseback to then plop their asses into a bar stool next to us and request the bartender put on some Mayhem or Dark Throne. But the downtime was too much, and the adventure was scant in this job. In addition to wanting to see the country, I was also fostering a brief and budding romance online with a girl in Bucaramanga, a town which she lovingly called Bucaranada. So I needed to hit the road. And what was supposed to be a month-long contract with this family was cut down about 2.5 weeks. I was sorry to leave them high and dry, but my friends, the work was making me downright bonkers. There were so many aspects of the job that made it quite obvious that this thing was doomed to fail, from the low production values to the dad's complete non-understanding of social media to there already being abundant options in the country to learn English, be it at schools or at private lessons or over services online such as Skype. The sense of tagging along with Ahab as he chased his whale was getting strong. And I am very familiar with failed projects, so I know how to smell them out, having failed at projects abundantly myself. So he had the energy and the mindset of like, you know, your 50-year-old suburban dad or uncle who discovered the internet, you know, late, 30 years too late. And he saw it as this amazing new thing, this amazing new way to connect with his country and profit off of it, all the while ignoring his kids' use of social media and those obvious signals that websites were a thing of the 90s and aughts. It was tough watching him dump all the family's money into this thing when really all they should have been doing was offering Skype and in-person classes that they promoted on TikTok and not constructing a website, hosting literally thousands upon thousands of hours of these really manically constructed video lessons. So I packed my bags and skipped out into the Andes to visit some ancient ruins I'd always wanted to see in the hills near San Augustin. After finding a room in a hostel and a particularly debaucherous couple nights enjoying food and strong drink at the fantastic tapas restaurant next to the hostel, Casa Jaguaria, Colombia, I met a local guide at the intercambio, which is a language exchange where locals and travelers can practice English and Spanish. And I hit it off with him. His name was Andres. He was a local Colombian guide looking to improve his English so as to make more money off of American and European tourists. And he offered me free travel throughout the area with him on his motorcycle in exchange for giving him English lessons along the way. One of many advantages to being even nominally bilingual, my friends. And so it sounded like a good enough deal to me, so we set off the next morning together to the many popular and quite different San Augustin archaeological sites to view their fantastic statuary. The San Augustin culture was one of the dominant peoples of Colombia, and they thrived from around 300 BC to 1400 AD. Their famous statuary was built during what they call the Classic period, from around 180 to 900 AD. And this was a mound-building culture. That's why it's on Mad for Mounds. And they built funerary mounds and filled them with statuary and megalithic stones, as well as grave goods. And while neighboring Inca and Wari and Chachapoyan kingdoms to the south were building monumental architecture and cities and temples, that kind of stuff seemed to be of no importance to the San Augustine culture. There were no buildings or temples or plazas or pyramids. They made only simple houses of materials which decompose quickly and have left us with nothing by which to understand them. They weren't good at ceramics, which were basic and hardly decorated, and they survived by means of very basic agriculture and hunting and gathering. And as a result of so much decomposing and disappearing, this San Augustine culture are pretty much a complete mystery. But for all that they didn't do, they did do one thing very well, and they did it fanatically, and that was carve sculptures. They were master sculptors, and their funerary practice was of considerable importance. There are thousands of burial mounds all over the mountains around San Augustine, and they're all bursting to the seams with fantastical stone sculptures of humans, animals, and human-animal hybrids, often all depicted with fangs and grimacing expressions on their faces. Perhaps they were guardians to the tombs, whose expressions are intended to inspire fear into anyone trying to enter the tomb. I don't know. The statues are made of volcanic stone, and some are large enough to weigh several tons. The prevalence of fangs, of these feline-like teeth, suggests fealty to a jaguar deity, which was quite common all over South America during this time period. And the statues were not made for viewing, they were made for burying. We can see them all now because they were dug up, but nearly all of these were made entirely for depositing in the earth. So imagine that, to be obsessed with this craft and to excel at this art of statuary, to make these incredible objects of art and then hide them from public view. There are nearly 500 statues around San Augustine that we know of, probably more buried in the earth, and this is no small feat for a Stone Age society to make that many, and hardly any of them were for public use or public display. And in addition to the statuary, megalithic stones were also used to create tombs. Massive stones, sometimes weighing tons, were arranged in rectangular fashion to inter the burial within, and then massive megalithic stones were placed on top of that rectangle, resulting in this massive and heavy stone coffin. And in addition to the main San Augustin archaeological site, there were like 4 other satellite sites, and we visited them all. And this is in the Andes. Steep mountain travel, heavy rain, and dense foliage is normal. And so what I'm trying to say is it must have been a shit ton of work to acquire this stone, to lug it around the mountains, to make these sculptures, and then lug them around again and place them in mounds. This is all without pack animals or the wheel. And during my trip to Colombia, all my encounters with ancient sites were relatively similar stories to this one. By all purposes, this area was occupied by rather primitive societies who had basic pottery, simple homes, stone tools, agricultural settlements instead of cities, and was an area largely free of the type of warfare, conflicts, or architecture just seen south of there with the Inca of Peru. But there still was a fanaticism evident in the abundant statuary in the area. But who the San Augustin were and why they did what they did is entirely unknown, because they disappeared just before the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors and European intervention. Somewhere around 1350 AD, the culture literally vanished, and they left unfinished sculptures and discarded tools in front of unfinished mounds. They instantly packed up their shit and ran away. So with no written history and no descendants left behind to tell the tale, all we have is these statues. But the land around San Augustin is remote and relatively untouched, so the answers might be out there. Of the known San Augustin sites, only about 30% of them have been excavated, and beyond that lies hundreds upon hundreds of miles of dense Andean jungle, which may hold secrets to their disappearance. So yeah, if you're in the area, check in with the folks at tutoenglish.com to watch some of the videos of me bumbling like a fool in front of a green screen, and you can brush up your Spanish while enjoying some Nordic black metal in Boyacá, and then head out to the hills to enjoy some fantastic and megalithic stone art.
Entertainment, entertainment, entertainment is what I need.